Thank you, and welcome back. John, Barbara, and Daryl, that was amazing and a very thoughtful conversation, and thank you for helping us kick off this Innovation Summit. With all your experiences, and COVID kind of added a little interesting twist to it, where we really had to kind of rethink, and I think I sort of grabbed onto one thing you talked about was really that how this accelerated really digital, and I think that's actually something that will carry us forward. And I took away sort of 3 points from this conversation. Access to energy is a universal need and expectation, but it shouldn't be a privilege. It really is about being inclusive because it is transformative on how society and it's a social good that all should benefit from. And thinking about that in the context of the fact that we will be adding 2.5 billion people in the next 30 years, that actually is pretty intimidating and very much of a purposeful thing to do. It's also not just about providing energy, it's about scaling and vertical horizontal integration, bookended by sustainability. That's sort of the new challenge we have to do, and we have to be very much put that front and center, and then we have to do scaling and we have to do horizontal and vertical integration. The new world is also about partnerships. Partnerships is critically important, and we see these alliances being formed now, and we're glad to here at the ION to be part of those partnerships that's getting formed. So super excited about that. That was my 3 highlights from the conversation. I know you could have gone on for a significant more amount of time, and and I had more, and maybe we'll continue over lunch later today. So moving right along, it is my pleasure here to be joined today by Brad Burke, Managing Director of the RISE Alliance. And you should kind of talk about some of the things that we are looking at, and in particular you, Brad, is doing here around clean energy initiatives that will be here at the ION. Super excited about that, Brad. And so Brad Burke is the Managing Director of the RISE Alliance. He has been in the leadership role at the RISE Alliance in 2001. And I think I may not have met you when you came to campus, but we've known each other for most of that time. During that time, RISE Graduate Entrepreneurship Program has achieved the #1 ranking in the US, and the RISE Alliance RISE Business Plan competition really has become the world's largest, richest student startup competition. What an accomplishment, Brad. That's super exciting. So having you here today, I think it's sort of like marks just the opening to some degree of the building. We're not fully open yet, but I have a few friends with me here, and really a new step for Houston. And so tell me a little bit about yourself, and also give a little bit of a background on, more importantly, maybe on the RISE Alliance, because I think of the 500 people that sign up, not everybody knows the RISE Alliance. So Brad, why don't you tell us a little bit?
Well, thanks, Jan, and thanks for the invitation to be here. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here at the ION. It is a beautiful facility. It was 6 months when I was here last, as you know, because you gave me the tour with a hard hat. It has changed incredibly. It is the most beautiful, exciting, and exciting development in Houston in a long time, and we could talk more about that. Yep. But so happy to be here. If I were to go back in time, the RISE Alliance, not many people know the story, but in about 1997, there was an article in Fortune magazine that wrote about the centers of entrepreneurship and innovation in the country. And what it talked about was the fact that in areas like Boston and San Francisco that had already been recognized as areas of innovation, centers of innovation, it was the role, what the article said was it was the role of a top-tier research university that played a key catalyst role in that area. Okay. That led to the light bulb going on from the faculty member who was the co-founder of the RISE Alliance, Steve Corral at Rice. Yeah. And Steve said, you know what, Rice needs to stand up and play that leadership role in Houston. Yep. We have an obligation, we have the ability and the opportunity to do that. And so the idea for the RISE Alliance started in 1997 with that Fortune article.
Okay.
You know how universities work. There was a good deal of discussion over the coming months and year, and Malcolm Gillis, the former president of Rice, was the president who provided the seed funding for the RISE Alliance to get started in 1999. Mm-hmm. We officially launched that year. We officially started pilot programs then and then officially launched in January of 2000.
Okay.
So this is our 21st year.
Okay, fascinating.
Of being around.
So tell me one more thing, and this is because I'm burdened by history and having been at Rice. So Steve was in the business school, but it was really not about purely a business school initiative from the get-go. I think that School of Engineering and the Sciences was involved in that. What role did the different partners play in that?
It was a huge role, and it was a huge strategic, wise strategic decision. So the RISE Alliance was under the guidance of in the name Rice Alliance, most people think of the name Rice Alliance as an alliance between Rice and the business community.
Yeah.
But the real name, reason the alliance, the word alliance came about was the alliance of the engineering school, the natural sciences school, the business school, and the office for research.
Okay.
And so for many, many years, I have had 4 bosses, the Dean of Engineering, the Dean of Natural Science, the Dean of the Business School, and the Vice Provost for Research. So that collaboration was the perfect way to start the Rice Alliance, to make it a cross-campus flagship entrepreneurship initiative coming out of Rice University.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is fascinating, and I think that seeing what that has done and sort of, escalated in the ranking to #1 sort of graduate entrepreneurship program is pretty amazing. And through most of it through, under your leadership, because Steve moved on and you took the reins and sort of grew it and expanded from there. And so really, yeah.
The other part I was going to say, and you may have heard this saying before, is that, what we also said 20 years ago at Rice was that Rice was sort of focused inside the hedges. Now that's figurative and literal, right? Because we have a 3-mile loop around Rice and there are hedges around Rice. And so Rice had this insular focus of operating inside the hedges. And the vision for the Rice Alliance was to operate outside the hedges, to have an impact on making Houston a leading center of innovation and entrepreneurship. So that was always a part of that vision, for us to play the role that Stanford has played in Silicon Valley. And that vision has been constant over the years. I liked Barbara's comment about the continuity of purpose. When we look back, we say, we ought to update our vision and our mission. Well, it turns out that mission and vision that was created 21 years ago is probably still the vision that we operate to, and probably still the right vision.
So if you look back, and then we'll get into the accelerator a little bit, but looking back, is there something you would have done differently? I mean, is there something that you say was like missed opportunity or something? Or is the evolution this is the way we planned it out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like the saying that sometimes I've heard people say that it took me 20 years to become an overnight success. People forget about the decades that took place to get where you are now.
Yeah.
So, I'm really proud that the Jones Graduate School of Business is ranked the #1 graduate entrepreneurship program in the country. 20 years ago, we were not in the top 25. And I asked about that when I joined Rice, and why aren't we trying to get to be #1? And the answer was sort of like, well, we have other things to worry about. And so 20 years later, here we are, the second year in a row where we have been ranked as the #1 university in graduate entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's a big win, and add to that when U of H also got #1 in undergrad. I mean, Houston is on the map, really, hitting hard here. And
I couldn't be more proud of U of H. They have been #1 or #2 in entrepreneurship in the undergrad area for much longer than Rice has. And for as long as I remember, they've been ranked #1 or #2 in undergrad entrepreneurship, so it's been terrific. The other areas in the Rice Business Plan competition. Before I joined the Rice Alliance, I was a judge in the very first year of the Rice Business Plan competition. We had 9 teams that competed for $10,000. And mostly those 9 teams were sort of academic exercises for those students, not necessarily serious about starting their company. But and we weren't by any means the very first competition. But it didn't happen overnight, and what I learned through the process is, my lesson learned was, and my philosophy, right or wrong, is, if you get a little bit better every year, it's like compounding interest. After about 10 years, you've actually got something, or 15 years, you've got something pretty large. I'm trying to teach my kids that all they got to do is put away $100 a month for every year of their life, and by the time they graduate, they'll have a huge sum of money. Now, they haven't learned that yet.
Because they're saying, Dad, you're not giving me the $100 a month.
But, and so no one would have ever thought that the largest, richest intercollegiate student business plan competition, student startup competition would be in Houston. They would have said, oh, it'll be in Silicon Valley, or it'll be in Boston. But I'm really proud that it's here in Houston, and we can showcase Houston and showcase Rice, but more importantly, showcase Houston. And next year, when we do the competition in April, we will showcase the ION and show all the students from around the U.S. what an amazing facility we have here.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that, and we have many conversations about that and many more ahead of us to plan for that, because we want to be here and we want to have you here and we want to showcase that, because this needs to be a destination. And so building that destination together with the RISE Alliance, the UH program, and the universities that are around there is just an amazing opportunity for us. And
Well,
so
the other thing, I know you're going to ask me another question, but the thing that I think was critically important was, if I look back, so the RISE Alliance was officially launched in 2000. I think we launched our first energy-focused program in 2002. And Chevron Technology Ventures was the first energy company to come on board as a supporter of the RISE Alliance, the very first. And they have been a supporter ever since then. And they are now a founding supporter of our Clean Energy Accelerator.
Yeah.
And you know what? One of the first, if not one of the very first law firms that supported us was Baker Botts. Baker Botts came on board as a supporter in 2002 and have been a supporter every year since.
Okay.
And is a founding supporter of the Clean Energy Accelerator. And the third that I would mention is Microsoft has come on as a founding supporter of the Clean Energy Accelerator.
Yeah.
It's the continuity of the support and the recognition that in order for Houston to become a leading center, you have to have the support that we have from the great folks like Chevron, Baker Botts, and Microsoft.
Yeah, I mean, it's as I said in my opening, it's really important to have those journeys, because this is bigger than all of us, and we can really, again, the partnership proportion that Barbara mentioned earlier here, you know. So let's get in a little bit to your Clean Energy Accelerator, which was supposed to be our conversation today. But so you just launched. I think you're sort of almost in stealth mode from the point of view of programming that now. So officially, you're starting programming maybe next week.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about, you know, so why a Clean Energy Accelerator? We seem to already have a lot of things going on in Houston with the Halliburton labs. You know, we have Greentown labs here now. So how you differentiate yourself? How are you different? What is it about the RISE Alliance one that say, oh yeah, that's where I need to be?
Well, let me go back and I'll tell you how the history first, and then talk a little bit about how the puzzle fits together. But about 2 years ago, we looked around the country and we looked at the major metropolitan cities: Boston, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, LA. Went around the map. And despite the fact that we were the energy capital of the world, we were the only major metropolitan city that didn't have a major energy and clean energy initiative specifically.
Okay.
The only city.
Oh.
And then when I looked at what we had within the RISE Alliance, so we had run energy venture programs for 19 years, had relationships with almost every energy corporation, a relationship with almost energy tech investor, and 10 years experience running accelerators through our involvement in the Surge Accelerator, followed by 8 years experience with AlSpark. So we had over 10 years accelerator experience. So I had a conversation over lunch with Wells Fargo, and I said, look, how can we be the energy capital of the world and want to remain the energy capital of the world without a major clean energy accelerator program? And they were fortunate to sign on as the initial investor supporter of the initiative to kick us off. And then we invited all the super major energy companies to be founding supporters, and every one of them agreed to it. Mm-hmm. Because we want Houston not only to be the current energy capital of the world, but to remain that and to become, as I think Darrell said, the energy transition capital of the world. Yeah. And it is, you know, and so it was so fortunate that all of the major players got behind that vision.
Yeah. No, it's impressive to see the how quickly they lined up, because everybody again said this is the right thing to do. Yeah. This is the challenge we're faced with, and we just can't ignore it.
But people didn't understand that quite as well 5 years ago as they do today. And it's the perfect storm. And why it makes so much sense is that, you know, we are a 12-week accelerator program that'll kick off next week. And we're so fortunate. Carrie Smith, as you know Carrie, has had over 10 years experience running accelerators, and she stepped up to say that she would be the executive director of the accelerator and running that program this year. But we're a 12-week program, and we hope that we'll be a feeder to the ION, and a feeder to Greentown Labs, and a feeder to Halliburton Labs, where once a company comes out of the accelerator, they're going to need a place to go and a place to continue to reside. We hope that we attract these most promising companies to Houston. They see what's here, and they say, man, I need to be at the ION, or I need to be at Greentown Labs. Yeah. So we hope to be a pipeline and a feeder to all the other organizations who are partners to what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting how you build an ecosystem and do something, to amplify what's going on here, and then people will come and they realize that, oh my goodness, this is where actually customers and partners are. And why would I be in the Valley or in Austin or in Atlanta if the customers are here and the problems are here? So this is really exciting.
Well, that's right. I mean, all the major corporations either have a headquarters here or have major presences here. And I think, some of the surveys I've seen, if you look at the number of technical people in Houston, both engineering and otherwise, Houston has probably more technical people in the metropolitan area than other because of the deep expertise that we have in the industry here.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the first cohort, because we had a conversation before you announced the application, and I said, don't try to overscale it and make it too big. You may be, you want to be focused, and it's unclear how many applications you would get because it's a brand new accelerator. So tell me, what was the process?
Well, so fortunately, we've had an existing process to reach out to startup companies and investors through 19 years of running energy venture programs. And so we did. We didn't know how many we'd get. We got more applications than we thought we did from more places than we ever expected. So we had applications from around the world and from around the U.S. Applications from all the way from California to Massachusetts. So the applicant pool covered the U.S.
Okay.
And so we ended up taking, let's say I'll say your advice to not try to get too big too fast.
Okay.
So we've got 13 companies that'll be in the accelerator. They come from the US and Canada.
Okay.
And they cover the broad spectrum of energy technologies. So solar, wind, hydrogen, geothermal, energy efficiency as well. Because people here realize it, but sometimes people don't realize, and I think Barbara touched on this, oil and gas is not going away for a long time, but oil and gas can be carbon neutral.
Yep.
And there are technologies in progress to make oil and gas carbon neutral at the same time that we're developing other technologies, solar, battery, hydrogen, geothermal, through that transition.
So you ended up with a large application pool, and you ended up picking how many?
13.
13, okay. And they're really spread out. So, thinking about this, and I'm really excited about having you sort of also, when we get in person, to have you over here at the ION. So, why was that important to you or the accelerator? And secondly, if the next round, you're going to want them to be in person, how many of these would have want to come here to do the program in person?
I'm optimistic. I think, once they get a glimpse of the ION, every startup is going to want to be here.
Yeah.
Look, when I first learned about the ION or the idea for the ION, it was a couple of years ago. But prior to that, I had spent time in Chicago at 1871, which is at the old Merchandise Mart. And it was clear to me that Houston needed something similar to that.
Okay.
So my first conversation was with the Rice Management Company, who brought us in, and I thought this was going to be an exploratory conversation of, what do you think Houston needs? You've been around a while, give us your thoughts. But it wasn't that. It was, look, what we're going to do is take the old Sears building in Midtown, and we're going to convert that to a startup hub. And I said, of course, that's the answer. Because Houston, what I saw in Chicago, that 1871 played a huge transformational role in Chicago that is exactly what we needed here. My belief is the ION will be, when we look back 5 or 10 years from now, the one single defining moment that changed the trajectory of Houston is going to be the launch of the ION and 300,000 square feet available for startups and for building the ecosystem. I think that this is a transformational moment in Houston's ecosystem for innovation and entrepreneurship.
So to kind of drilling down a little bit on that, because we've talked a lot about that, and I very early on was very much outspoken. It's like, this time around, we're doing it a little bit differently. And I'm just curious about your perspective. Why do you think that this transition, whether it is the ION or all the other thing that's going on with Houston Exponential, you have the Canon, you have TMCX, you have Mass Challenge, G-Beta, you have all this organization here, startup development. What is different this time compared to the past 20 years? Why do you think this time we're doing it right?
Oh, I think a tremendous amount has changed over the last 20 years, and I do think we're getting it right now. I mean, I do think that at the core, the ION is at the core in many ways. And part of what's great about that is that ION is an investment by Rice University. I'm biased, so I'm biased because I'm a Rice employee and have been around Rice for a long time. Look, this is an investment by Rice, and Rice is not going anywhere. Rice has got a long-term commitment to Houston and a long-term commitment to the Ion. You know, what you see sometimes is you get people with interesting ideas, and somebody will put some effort behind something, but you know, after a couple of years, they get bored and they go on to something else. You know, this is not going anywhere, and Rice is not going anywhere. But what also has changed is the other players in Houston that didn't exist before. The Greentown Labs is here. The Cannon on the west side of town is here. Texas Medical Center launched, as you know, about 5 or 6 or a little bit more a few years ago, a huge life science accelerator program with the Life Science Innovation, TMC Innovation Institute. And we just launched a 300,000 square foot makerspace east of downtown. And so much is different today. I think we're now past that critical point. We've got critical mass now in Houston that I think is very different than we were 10 or 15 years ago.
So one of the things that you know I'm talking a lot about on my team is like really being intentional about what we're doing, and you feel like this time also we're more intentional, that we're thinking, let's not try to be somebody else and copy some other ecosystem, but try to be intentional about what Houston is really strong at. How does that play into, and maybe it's different in the past and now?
Oh, you know, I think I think Houston's being very strategic. We've had the largest we've had the largest medical center in the world, but we had not capitalized on it, and we are today. We are the energy capital of the world, and now we're capitalizing on that. In the area of software, you know, we're really focused on enterprise software. So I think we're playing the right bets and not trying to do it all. NASA's doing a great job helping to foster commercialization of aerospace technologies. And you guys are running an aerospace accelerator now. So I think we're placing the bets in the right place and not trying to boil the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, and that's my feeling too. I really believe that that's why it's different, and that's why I chose to be really, you know, be part of this and really amplify what we're doing, because it's so exciting to see how it energizes the city. And we will be about a lot of other things, but you have to start with what you're good at.
Well, and the other thing that you're really taking a leadership role here is around diversity and inclusion. So you're launching with DivInc, bringing DivInc in to help support a diverse and inclusive startup ecosystem, which is hugely important because traditionally that's not been the case. Women and certain minorities are underrepresented in the world of entrepreneurship. And I think what we're trying to do, if we look at Houston, and we brag often that Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the US. And we're not just bragging about the general demographics of the Houston population, but we're trying to be inclusive and be diverse in the work that we're doing.
And by the way, for those out there, if you have not read Steven Kleinberg's book, Prophetic City, I would highly recommend you read it to get a grip of the history of Houston and where we are today. And it's part of the story, because I think diversity and inclusion, you know, that's where we can really win in addition to our stronghold, you know. And I'm really also, having been at Rice a long time, I'm very proud of sort of Rice's sort of investment in, we're always been in and of Houston. We're now for and with Houston. And I think that's an important message, because we are outside the hedges, as you said, and we're really part of Houston, and that's why this is the Ion. It's not a Rice campus building.
Well, I have to give a little bit of last plug for David Lebron, the president of Rice University. He announced that he is going to be retiring at the next year. David came in and created a vision for the second century of Rice, and that vision was very pointed in saying that part of the vision is to contribute to the Houston landscape. And then he got behind in a big way the launch of the Ion, as you know. And so I give big credit to David and the role that he's played in helping to ensure that Rice got outside the hedges and had a major impact on Houston. No, I mean, the vibrancy of this place that we're at now, and this is about placemaking, because we're also building a very different destination in a small, you know, a neighborhood, if you will, in a city that actually will be very accessible and open, and there will be another dozen building here. Just across the street, we have Greentown Labs, you know, with 30 startups in their incubator, you know, so we have all the assets of the companies around here that really can make that change. And I did one other interesting exercise the other day, by the way. I mean, it's like, this just occurred to me. I said, how many software startups are there in town that really are in the sort of almost past Series A funding? And when I came into 45, I stopped counting. And I did not even, I said, I'm not going to include energy-focused software company. I'm not going to include
healthcare software company. I just focused on just what necessary, and not enterprise. Most of them are not enterprise.
Yeah.
Most people don't know the vibrancy of the software ecosystem in Houston. It's a story that people need to realize. Like, this is actually a tech destination. It's a tech hub. It's a place of innovation and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, well, I'm a believer. I drank the Kool-Aid a long time ago, and certainly believer in
so
that.
in closing then, so 5 years from now, looking back at our conversation here, and maybe we have to have another one in a year to talk about what happened to the first accelerator, but 5 years from now, where will the Houston be? Why would people, it's like, yep, they made it?
Well, 5 years from now, I mean, my hope is that 5 years from now, people look at Houston and say, Houston is the energy transition capital of the world, and Houston gets it, and the energy corporations in Houston get it. And then they look and people point to the ION and say that the ION is one of the most successful startup hubs in the country, if not beyond the US. Yeah. Because I think it's incredible what's here, and especially compared to what I've seen in other parts of the US. And third, I would like to, I hope, since we run, I'd have to, put in a plug, since we run the Clean Energy Accelerator, I want people to look back and go, wow, you've got one of the largest, most successful clean tech, clean energy accelerators in the country, if not in the world. And, it's a small, I know those visions are so small, but
no, I mean,
facetiously I say that.
Well, compounding interest.
Yeah, exactly.
That will take us there. So with that, thank you, Brad, for a fascinating conversation. I mean, the future is bright, and I think that we'll work together to make it, and with our former, fireside chat conversation also to kind of keep amplifying that. So thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you at the ION next time.